On a previous video, I received a question from Jonathan that said, "What does empty of isness mean?" Firstly, there's no need to say sorry. Asking about empty of isness, this is not something that should be obvious to you. In fact, you're asking one of the most esoteric questions someone can ever ask. When we talk about something being empty, when we talk about emptiness or Sunyata, we are describing the inherent nature, the true nature of something. It's what we're referring to. Now, the true nature of something is so esoteric that I can't even give you an answer of what it actually is. All I can do is speak around emptiness. I can speak around Sunyata to a point where, if the logic seems sound to you, you realize, there must be something there, but I haven't yet told you what that thing is. In saying we're referring to the nature of existence, what that means is we're asking, what does it mean to exist? Am I perceiving things as they are? Is my perception, is my comprehension of existence true? Is it real? Is this the full picture? Now, we have 5 senses, and we perceive everything through those 5 different lenses. But there are many senses that human beings don't have, right? A snake sees through heat. It has heat pits, and there is a different organ there with a heat sense. A shark senses through electricity. Pigeons and other birds can sense magnetism, magnetic fields. So they're sensing things, they are perceiving and comprehending things in a completely different way. Let's say I take someone who loses all of their senses except for sound, and I take a sound ball, those healing balls, and I get the ball, I get the stick, I hit it, and dong. To that person now, the entire existence of the ball is a sound. They do not know the shape of the ball, they don't know what the ball looks like, so you and I would say, okay, that person is missing the fundamental senses of sight and touch, the 2, most important senses, we would say, the most comprehensive senses. If they don't even know the shape of the ball, they don't know the ball. All they know is the sound of the ball. Okay. We are missing the electromagnetism of the ball. We are missing the temperature of the ball. And who's to say there aren't infinite potential organs that could evolve, or that a god could create, or whatever? Who's to say there are not potentially infinite different organs with an infinite number of different ways to perceive something? Now, I'm no mathematician, but if there is an infinite number of things, then by having 5, as we have 5 senses, that's not any percentage at all. It's not 1%, it's not 0.1%, it's essentially 0%. So we're saying, okay, we take a cup. I can sense this cup in 5 ways. But if I'm sensing it, if I'm perceiving 0% of the cup, then my comprehension of the cup is just as bad, if not worse, than someone with only sound having a comprehension of a sound bowl. My comprehension is 0. I have no idea what the cup is. I can see it, so I know it's there. The concept is in my head. I have a conceptual understanding, so I know there's a cup, right? You and I agree the cup exists. That's obvious. But it shouldn't be obvious if our perception of the cup is 0%, in comparison with the entire potential perception of the cup. Now, this is happening because any sensorial perception is not perceiving the object as such, it's perceiving a kind of emission from the object. If you vibrate the object, you pick it up as sound, the sound is sent to the brain, it processes the data, creates an abstraction, a projection of sound in your mind. If you see it, then light is bouncing off the object, hitting your eyes, the same process happens. We are never perceiving the object. Even in touch, we're not actually perceiving the object, we're perceiving a feeling, we're perceiving an abstraction of the object. It's not direct. Even if you had all infinite senses, if that were possible, you still would not be perceiving the object, only some kind of emission from the object. So, what is the object? What is the actual cup? What's the thing that I'm missing here? We're asking, what is there to be comprehended at the core of something? What is its base nature, if its base nature is not a sensorial emission? Well, part of the problem is we are assuming that the cup is somehow inherently existent in its occupation of space and its interaction with other things that contact it. And that is kind of where the cup resides. And then at a distance from that cup, there is our observation of the cup. And we're trying to bridge this gap. And our senses help us to bridge the gap. And we're making the assumption that the true nature of existence is over here. You know, my perception is here, the true nature is here. How do I bridge the gap to find the truth? But actually, there is nothing outside of senses when you assume that the item is away from you, that it's a different thing. This is where the idea of everything is one comes from. It's a strange way to word it. I wouldn't go as far as to say everything is one, but the reverse is also not true. Everything is not exactly separate. Okay, I've just drawn a nice image of a cup, and on the other side an even nicer image of a stick man. So rather than saying the cup is here and I am here, in Buddhism we say the cup is here and you are here. Now, why do we say this? If I go over there, then you would say the process of me going from here to there is called moving. But if I was in a void, if the entire universe disappeared except for me, and then I go over there, you would not call that moving, because relative to nothing is not movement. I cannot go towards or away from anything if there's nothing there, right? So movement itself relies on there being something to move to and from. Similarly, observation, consciousness relies on there being something to be conscious of. If the entire universe disappeared, and my imaginations disappeared, my thoughts disappeared, my memory disappeared, my sensorial memory of what is a sound, what is this, if all of that vanished, I would not be observing, because there would be nothing to observe. So in that sense, like with this piece of paper, by destroying the cup, I've also destroyed the man. So the two are not one as such, but they are interdependently existent. They're holding each other's existence up. So if we're stuck seemingly in this abstractive kind of comprehension, in Buddhism what we're looking at is there a way? The main question is there a way to perceive the cup, to perceive the air or the concept of air, to perceive your mind directly without any sensorial or imaginary input? Is there a way to directly see that thing? What does it mean to comprehend something for what it really is, which is its lack of inherent existence? coming away from this video and thinking to yourself, okay, I now know, or let's say you agree and you say, right, things do not exist independently of each other because the observer, the observed, this and that. Well, that does not mean you can now comprehend things directly. It doesn't mean that you are perceiving emptiness. It just means that you've formed, as I said at the beginning of this video, you've formed a mental logic that things should not exist in that way, but to you they still do. You're not actually perceiving the emptiness. So let's describe this lack of isness for a moment and try to give you as close to an answer as I can. Now, when I say a cup retains no cupness, a cup has no isness, what it means is the cup exists in the exact same way that a rainbow exists. You see a rainbow and you go, okay, it's there, it exists, and yet if I try to touch it, there's nothing. The second you stand inside it, you no longer see it. Then the question arises, if there were no beings to begin with that had the sense of sight, there was never a sense of sight, and there never will be a sense of sight, then did a rainbow ever exist? It's an interesting question. Does the rainbow exist? Similarly, we can say, does the cup exist? When you see the cup directly, it's not about I'm here, the cup's there, and I found a way to witness it that doesn't rely on senses. Seeing the cup directly means you are witnessing the interdependent nature like the piece of paper. You're directly realizing that that is the reality. It is not a conceptual understanding, it's an actual perception, it's a comprehension. When you reach this comprehension, on a base level, we call it a spiritual awakening. When you reach it to a really thorough, complete, pure level, we call it enlightenment or Buddhahood. Now, why is any of this important? I'm not going to explain how to perceive emptiness in this video because we're just talking about what it is. This is not a meditation guide or anything, but you might think, well, why does any of this matter? Why is it important to be able to see things for what they really are? My response would be, a tree we think of as being alive, right? If a tree had the potential to be able to perceive as a human perceives, but it never comes out of that cocoon, would that not be a tragedy? The greater and truer your perception, the more wonderful that existence is. Thank you. Namaste.
Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Om 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 Mani Padme Hum.